Your story is everything,
Mm,
because your story is what people can connect to, and
mhm,
people don't necessarily connect to uh, how great your talent is or how well
mm,
you are at your job, but people connect to your story.
mm,
And if we continue to share each other's stories, not only will you begin to give hope to others, but your hope in yourself will build as well, or your hope
mhm,
for yourself will build as well. And so
mhm.
our stories, that's the most important thing that we can share and talk
Yeah.
through. And so
But if you just want to share a little bit about yourself to give those that are watching that may haven't heard of you, I don't know who hasn't heard of you yet, but there may be one or two
hey,
people who haven't heard of you. So if you can just share a little
no
bit about
worries.
yourself and then we'll go ahead.
Yeah, so basically, I'm a school assembly speaker, and so I travel around the country and travel to different countries as well, doing school assemblies, speaking to students.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing this probably about 10 years now. Full time, I've
Mm-hmm.
been doing it about three
Wow.
years now. And so,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I have two little girls that are 6 and 3. The three, she just turned 3 like last week. So she's like a brand
Oh.
new 3. And then my wife Courtney is way smarter than I am, and so yeah, and so I come from Burnsville, Minnesota. So I am not a native Wisconsinite. I even say Wisconsin wrong. I don't even know how you say Wisconsin, but I say it wrong. But I could say Minnesota right for sure. And
Oh, and
I
look
went
who
to
just
school with
joined.
Christina.
Yes, we went to school and Claire just joined. We worked with Claire. Hello, Claire.
What up,
And you are one of our
Claire?
favorites.
Mhm.
Oh, well, our connection is North Central where we went to school, so I mentioned that before. But hey, let's dive in here. So, Terrence, you've been
Yeah,
working as a motivational speaker for 10 years. What was your inspiration for becoming a motivational speaker?
yeah. So basically, what happened, it was when I was like 16, 17 years old. I was watching this other motivational speaker, and he was terrible. Like, and I'm watching him. I even remember saying to myself, this is horrible. And the reason why it was horrible to me was because he wasn't talking to me. He was talking to the athletes.
Mm,
He was talking to the like
mm-hmm,
popular people, and as he was
mm-hmm,
talking, I can even see it on my friends. Like, we're just like, okay, well, he doesn't mean us because we don't play sports. We're not those popular people.
mm-hmm,
And so it just occurred to me, like, you know what? I, I don't even care if I'm good at this. At least I want to try to reach people
mm,
that are like me and people that feel like they are forgotten or pushed to the
mm.
side. And so, yeah, that's when it started, where I was like, you know what? Maybe I can do this.
And obviously, we've seen from the reaction that there's a huge need for what you're
Mm.
doing, and you are bringing worth and value to these students, and something we're going to dive into. But first, can you tell us what is your favorite part about being a motivational speaker?
Oh man, my most favorite part about it is at the end of the assembly, because when you
Mm-hmm.
go into the assembly, you all the kids, you never know what they're gonna think about you, and uh, everybody always is like, "Oh, you don't get nervous no more," and I'm like, "No, I get nervous every single time I get up there,
Mm-hmm.
because the students, they just, you got to prove your worth to them. You got to prove
Mm-hmm.
that you're worth listening." And matter of fact, there was one assembly I did where the minute I got on stage, somebody yelled out, "Get this whack dude off stage." And I was like, wow, we're going to start like that? Okay, well, let's get into it. And by the end of the assembly, that same guy came up to me, gave me a hug, had tears in his eyes.
Wow.
And that to me
Wow.
is the my favorite part. And when you see the students just crying, and this isn't a cry like, oh man, I'm so sad, but it's a cry where the students are just like, I never knew people
Mm.
cared for me like that. And you see
Wow.
teachers with tears in their eyes and students, and you could always find me over to the side, and I'm like, oh, this is so good. I'm so blessed to be here. So that's my favorite
Mm-hmm.
part.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Wow. And so obviously there's a huge need for students to know that they are loved, they're valued, and people care about them.
Right.
So what is the most challenging part about being a motivational speaker?
Uh, at the most traveling or the most difficult part is being away from my kids and traveling,
Mm-hmm.
because I'll as I go out and I tell students, hey, somebody loves you, and since there are people that don't have that family support, they don't have that mom or they don't have that dad, I'm like, for this moment, I want to be that for you, and I want to tell you that I love you. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, when I'm out there telling kids like, hey, there's somebody that loves you, I have two little girls at home that are like,
Mm-hmm.
does my dad love me? And so
Yeah.
it's always trying to like do that balancing act of being home enough to be able to make sure my daughters grow up knowing that their dad loves them to pieces, but then
Mm-hmm.
also being able to do what I feel like I am called to do. And so that's always
Exactly.
really tough.
Yeah, I can imagine it's so challenging. So how do you keep that fine balance of being a dad to your daughters and being a dad to those who are fatherless?
Oh man. Well, I once again, I have the smartest wife ever. She is 20 times smarter than I am. And so she is a big help in keeping me balanced. And for
Mm-hmm.
instance, this summer, I was doing 9 different camps, and that's 9 different weeks of camp. And there's like
Mm-hmm.
12 weeks during the summer. So I was gone a lot of the summer. And so when it came time to be August, my wife was like, look, you have been gone way too much. You need to be home, you need to be with your girls and spend some time.
Mm-hmm.
And so she definitely lets me know when it's time to
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, you got to come home. And so being able to give her control over my schedule and be like, all right, you let me know if I'm doing too much. And I don't want to make
Yeah.
it sound like I do that perfectly. Like, oh, she said can't go. I'm not gonna go. There is some ups and downs to it, but it's steadily trying to find that balance.
Yeah. Good. Well, it sounds like you're a good match for each other. You need each other
Yes.
in this.
Hmm.
And she's just as important part of what you're doing at the school assemblies, though we don't see her at the assemblies.
Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
literally would not be able to do it if it wasn't for her.
Mm-hmm. And you're so clear about that in your book as well, which let's talk about your book. So,
Yeah.
Secrets Anonymous, it's coming out at the end of September. Well, it's already been pre-released, but
Hmm.
it's being released at the end of September. And you're going to be doing a book tour as well. And
Yes.
so your first book tour, but certainly not your
Yeah.
last, right?
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how this book does.
Well, I've read your book. I've had the privilege to read it now, and I can just say I'm so impressed by it. First of all, with your honesty, your story. I thought I knew you, Terrence, but I didn't know you. When I get to read your book and I get to know your story, it's just wow. I am so amazed
Oh,
at the person that you are, what you've overcome, and then who you are as a person to those out there that need that influential character. I can just see why you're a motivational speaker by reading your book.
oh,
You have the story and it is so touching. But you cover and you talk about all of these difficult subjects that students, teens, people have gone through in their life. So we're just going to go through subject by subject, if
yeah.
that's okay. And
Hmm.
I don't want to give away too much in your book because I
Yeah.
want people to read it. And there's stories in each chapter, and those stories are something that everybody's going to want to read and capture. So just
Yeah.
share
You
as
guys
much
got
as
to
you
read it.
want to
You
know.
got to read
Yes.
it. Don't
So
just take this over. You got to read it.
exactly. The point is to buy the book and read it and share the book. So give it
Hmm.
away to somebody else as well. So the first subject that you cover, which I think is really important, is bullying. It's something that
Yes.
is so common in schools today, and for parents, teachers, students. I mean, there's so many angles to look at in bullying, but can we just say, what is your biggest piece of advice to somebody who is being bullied? Let's look at that person first.
Well, one of the biggest things is, first of all, I didn't even want to call it bullying because it
Mm,
has turned into something else. And for a student, they might not recognize like, oh, I'm being bullied, but bullying can be in the form of, hey, look, you're not going to be a part of our group right now because
mm,
you've done A and B, or there's a lot of times where students they will send pictures of different things that, like other students will capture. And if I'm being blunt with it, like some students, they'll send pictures of themselves naked to other students. And then next thing you know, it is spread across the whole school. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody's looking down on them. And for them, they're not looking at it as I'm being bullied, but it's like,
Mm.
they're like, oh my gosh, this is my fault. I'm so stupid. Why did I
Mm.
do this? And so it's like, no, you didn't deserve any of that. And we all make mistakes, but that doesn't mean that you should be shamed for them. And so letting that student know that, hey, like you are loved, and you do not have to think that those other people are right about you. You do not find
Mm-hmm.
your value in other people. Your value is already in who you are. And so,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's what I would tell somebody that's being bullied.
Yep. Okay. Good. That's good advice, and I think that goes for a lot of other subjects you talk about as well. But what would you say as well to the parents of the child who is being bullied, or, as you say, to being, oh, because you said they can be excluded. It can be a whole number of things that it may not even be
Right,
as bad as we think bullying is, but anything can be termed bullying. So, what would you
right.
say to the parents as well of their child who is being um, mistreated in this way?
Yeah, one of the things is I think, especially even me as a parent, maybe I'm just going to speak for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yep.
as me as a parent, if I heard somebody was doing this to my child, my knee-jerk reaction is like, I'm going to that school and I'm beating up everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And but that shouldn't be the first thing that we do. The
Mm.
first thing that we should do as parents is to kneel down and give them a hug and be like,
Mm.
I am sorry this is happening to you. Recognize their feelings. Don't just go to your feelings and go to your anger, but it's like, this is still a student that's hurt. And this is the most important thing that you need to take action with right now. And
Mm-hmm.
it would be awesome if we had, anytime we got hurt, our parents were there and they gave us that first hug, and oh yeah, I'm loved. And it doesn't matter if you like fell and skinned your
Mm-hmm.
knee, if somebody was picking on you. It would be nice for all of us to have that person that loves us to come down and give us a hug. But unfortunately, that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
happen. As we've learned, that's not always the
Right.
case. And so that
Mm-hmm.
moment that you can find, like, man, this is happening with my student, that should be your reaction right there, as quick as just to bend down and be like, I am so sorry.
Mm.
And you don't
Mm.
deserve this. And so
Yeah.
I think, matter of fact, I
Wow.
think one of the best examples of this is we're going to school. And I think the example would be Full House. And I'm not talking about the new Full House and DJ doing all sorts of crazy things. Like the old school Full House with Danny Tanner, and he's trying to raise his three little girls. And every episode, there is always that heart touching moment where, for maybe
Mm.
DJ, she did this, and you can tell the whole episode is usually about how she's trying to keep it a secret, how she's trying to deal with things by
Mm.
herself. But the episode always
Mm.
gets wrapped up with their family coming together, and not necessarily going to go deal with it first, but it's recognizing like, hey, I hear what you're saying, and I recognize that you're hurt. And there's always
Mm.
that hug at the end.
Mm.
And even though it seems unreal, for me, I don't think that is
Mm.
unreal. I think that is plausible in all of our families.
Yeah. So good. So affirm our children in their feelings and their experiences, what they're
Hmm.
going through, first and foremost. Mm. That's good advice. Wow. All right. And then to the bully, what advice do you give to the bully?
Uh, One of the things that we realize as bullying, maybe it's already been said tons of different times, is that bully, there's something going on with you.
Mm.
And
Mm.
you have to look at yourself and say, why am I doing this? Why am I putting this person through it? Because it's not always like, I just don't like this person, I'm going to do that. But there's something else that is deeper, that is there. Why do you have this anger with that person? And once you
Mm,
start to realize, like, I am hurting other people, I, I think so many times we deal with the guilt. And it's like, I have done
mm,
this. And so as you start to deal with the guilt, sometimes you'll start to dig your way out by doing the same means that you dug yourself in. So you're steadily
mm,
just trying to, well, I'm gonna hurt this person. I'm not gonna hurt this person anymore, but this person really deserves it. But you're just steadily digging. And at that point, you need to just set the shovel down and go, okay, this is how I've wronged a lot of people. And now I have to just go and
mm,
apologize for this. I have to
mm,
let these people know, you know what? I am sorry that I did this. And a lot of people overlook that. They're like, well, I can't go to that person. They're going to be really upset. Or what happens if they don't accept my apology? It's not
mhm,
about if they accept your apology. It's all about
mm,
you just you knowing I did this and
mm,
I'm doing what I can to make this better. And even if they
mm,
react where they're like, I don't want to ever talk to you again. Okay. But you still did what you needed to do and now you can have a clear heart about it.
mm. Good, good advice. Okay, how about to the parents of the bullies? Perhaps even there's some parents even have young children and they hear about their child is being the rougher bully even at school. So no matter what age your child is, what advice would you give to parents who have heard or know that their child is bullying other children?
Now, okay, this is the tricky part. And I don't anytime I talk to whether it's students or parents, I don't want them to walk away defeated. And
Mm,
so there is a responsibility as parents that we have to take. And matter of
mm-hmm,
fact, my wife right now, she's going to school to get her master's in counseling. And she is beginning to learn how students react. And uh, she's learning like, hey, a lot of times it's things that are going on at home that just
mm-hmm,
bleeds into school or wherever they're at. And
yeah,
so as parents, not to just get down on yourself. Every parent, you know what? You're a human being and
mm-hmm,
we're going to make mistakes. That's just how it
mm,
is. I love my little girls to pieces, but there have been lots of times where I was like, ooh, I probably shouldn't have done that. That wasn't good. Or, man, I've yelled at her way too many times today. And so it's recognizing, like, okay, I am flawed.
mm,
How have I added to this situation?
mm-hmm,
What is going on that I've created an atmosphere for this? And
mm-hmm,
always remember, like I've done like some parent groups and talking to parents, and
mm-hmm,
a lot of times they'll be like, well, I don't know what to do. They're just going off and doing this and doing that and sneaking out. And I'm like,
mm-hmm,
man, you just need to take the time to love them. And even
mm,
though some students are like, get away from me, you're gross, I don't want any of that. No, every single student wants to be loved by
mm,
you, not by
mm-hmm,
these other friends and not by their girlfriend or boyfriend. They really want to be
mm,
loved by you. Doesn't matter what they say, I promise you, they want to be loved by you. And if you can
mm.
do those small things to make it happen, then you're on your way to course correcting and the things that they're doing outside of your home.
Mm. And I think your dad hugs that you give are a sign of that. That it's
Mm.
and mom hugs too, right? I think you mentioned that mom or dad, so
Right.
it can be a hug from both, and so it's so needed for the
Hmm.
students. Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's one of the
Okay.
things that we try to make sure in the assembly is that when we're talking about dad hugs, it's not necessarily, hey, look, you got to have this awesome dad. I don't care about your mom or anything. No, it's like just
Yeah.
having that person that cares about you, whether it's a
Hmm.
dad hug, a mom hug,
Yeah.
a friend hug, having somebody just say, I'm
Hmm.
here with you. And so,
Yep. It's so important. So, last question about the topic of bullying. Is there anything that you feel schools could do to help stop the bullying? As you've been traveling in the last 10 years and going to different school assemblies, is there any recommendation that you give to schools and what they could implement in their systems to help with this?
now, the school assembly part of me is like, you need to have a school assembly speaker come in. But
Exactly.
uh,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
an- another thing that they can do, and part of the reason why why we wanted to do the book, is because we wanted to create a source for students to be able to come back to. And after the assembly's done, or maybe even if an assembly isn't there, that they can get in their hands and go, okay, I can relate to this story. I can relate to this student saying this. And then in the book, we talk about, okay, these are some things that you can do to help. And so with schools, that's what I would say. I just say, hey, going through it, don't just, the saddest part to me is a lot of times, and this is absolutely true, there'd be some schools where like, hey, we're going to talk about bullying and depression. And I have had at least a handful of principals go, oh, that doesn't happen in our school. I'm like, are you crazy? Like, this is every single school, no doubt about it. And so being able to recognize that and take the time to deal with it. And schools, if you let your counselor, and it might seem like I'm jaded or because my wife is becoming a counselor, but even before she started to take that journey, let the school counselor do their job. Let them be able to have those moments with students and be able to bring students in and be able to talk to them. And even if you need to get two counselors, I know schools are always like pushing the budget, but I think making sure that we take care of the whole student and not just the math and science part but the emotional part too, then that is setting up the student to succeed way better than just taking care of one part of them.
Yep, I agree with you. I think they should have courses in emotional health and awareness as well in these topics. So that would be amazing to see. Okay, so next topic we'll dive into is depression and anxiety. Now, you shared an interesting fact about trauma and its impact on the brain. Can you explain that a little bit more for us?
Yeah. So basically, when we have a traumatic event happen, it makes a new ripple in the brain where different connectors have to connect to different things. And so it's not just, hey, this happened, get over it. It's going to take some time, but get over it. But no, people really, really need to talk it through because you have been physically impacted. And it just like we're learning about how these head collisions in football are doing things to people's brain. This is the same thing that happens with our emotional impact. And a lot of times, what I try to tell students is you have two parts of your brain. And I'm not a scientist by any means. And so somebody might be listening. They're like, well, there's a lot more that goes into it. I'm recognizing that way more that goes into it. But there is one part of your brain that's all about like, I love these things. I love Frosted Flakes, which I do because they're delicious. Or I like the color blue. There's that side of the brain, but then there's the other part of your brain that is all about making sure that you're not feeling any pain, and you gotta avoid pain. And so, in a case where, let's say we're walking down the street and you're thinking about, oh man, it's a beautiful day outside. If you see a lion in the middle of the road, you want to be thinking, oh man, that lion, that's a pretty lion. I really like that lion. No, the back of your brain's going in and it's going to go, we need to avoid pain. You need to get out of there. You need to run. And just as much as that happens with something physical, the same thing happens with something emotional, where it's just like, okay, if something happens to you, your back of your brain kicks in and it goes, you need to avoid pain at all costs. And so a lot of students, that's why they'll start to do other things and they'll start to get anxiety, is because that back of their brain is steadily trying to avoid pain. And a lot of times what depression looks like is, let's say that you're at a wall and somebody throws a basketball at you. First thing you're going to try to do is, a lot of times you're going to try to catch that one basketball. But if somebody starts throwing multiple basketballs at you, you can't catch multiple basketballs. And so what a lot of people do, they just dunk and cover. And that's what depression is. It's you just trying to protect everything, and you can feel the hurts, you can feel the hits of the ball, and it sets in. I don't know what to do about this. I don't know if I can handle this.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting how you mentioned that in trauma it redirects your brain and the reaction that you have. And so if you think about any trauma that we've experienced, that creates a chemical reaction in our brain, and that can then cause the depression and anxiety. So there is a scientific reasoning towards
Yeah.
depression and anxiety, and a solution as well, as you say. But what is the
Well,
biggest encouragement you would give someone? Oh, go ahead.
even for parents, you have to make sure that you're dealing with your own trauma as well. And my
Mm.
wife, she gave me a really interesting fact, because as she's learning how to counsel and everything, they're learning the scientific stuff about that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a new study that people are starting to really realize that the trauma that happens to you as a parent, it
Mm.
affects your DNA. And
Mm-hmm.
as you pass your DNA along to your kids, then they're dealing with the trauma that you have dealt with, because now it's in their
Mm.
DNA too. And so
Wow.
you really have to take care of yourself and start to go, okay, I need to deal with this, because one way or another, it's going to come out. And
Yeah.
so if you can deal with it within yourself, then you can help your student walk through it as well.
So is the idea that before you have children, even work through your issues, and then it may stop that cycle from passing on. Is that the idea?
They'll still like their DNA will still be impacted by it, but
Mm.
as you can deal with it and you start to see it, then you will be able to help them in the long run too.
Sure. Yep. Good. That makes sense. So what is the biggest encouragement you would give students that are struggling with depression and anxiety? And it's something you shared quite openly that you have struggled with too. So you can even share from your personal
Mhm.
experiences or your professional experiences too.
Yeah, a lot of times I recently, probably in the last year and a half or so, I found out that I'm bipolar. And so one of the things that really
Uh-huh.
helps with, even when I started to go, is you have to talk. It all starts with opening your mouth and saying, okay, this is what's going on. Because as the back of your brain is
Mm-hmm.
taken over, and it's like, I just have to avoid this pain, then you're cutting out that logic
Mm-hmm.
part that thinks through, like, no, everything is good. And so
Mm.
the more you actually talk, the more you start to brain that goes, I need to avoid pain. And then you'll activate that front
Mm.
part that goes, okay, everything is not that bad. I just need to figure this out. And the more and more you talk, I guarantee to you, the more and more you're going to start to feel a little better. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like I started
Mm.
talking, everything is great now, this is awesome. It's going to take some time to continue having them know,
Yeah.
like, hey, this is where I'm at and this is how I feel.
Mm-hmm. It's a simple answer, as you say, but walking through it is another story, actually talking it out, and so important. And that's a lot of the advice that you give as well for some of these difficult issues too. That's so important. Um, okay, so let's move on to abuse. So you had written that abuse causes feelings of inferiority, and it affects
Yeah.
self-confidence, and it repeats itself unless broken. So how does someone stop the cycle of abuse and regain their sense of worth and self-confidence?
Yeah. Once again, it's going to seem like it's repetitive, but you have to say something to somebody. And part of the reason for the
Mm,
book,
yeah.
obviously, we want to be able to give some answers, but one of the biggest parts of the book is coming along students that are going through each of these topics and saying, I understand, I am recognizing that this is an issue, or I want to give words to things that you might not be able to get out on your own. And it
Mm-hmm.
definitely does come back to, you have to now let somebody else know, and you gotta reach out for help, because you do not deserve, just like, there's
Mm-hmm.
nobody that's over you. And people that abuse people, they use that to kind of keep you under control. And you need to realize that you are important and you are loved, and you did not do anything to cause this abuse to happen to you. but now it's time for you to tell somebody else. And just because it's not wrong to ask for help, and you shouldn't feel that this is a great thing to ask somebody for help, because sometimes when we can't do the things that we need to do, then we need help in order to do those things.
Mm-hmm. The world would be a different place if we really lived this out. And that's your message, really, that you are spreading. And this is why I think your book needs to be in the hands of every student, every parent, every teacher, so that they can see the importance of talking and affirming students in their worth and in their value. And again, you can repeat it as much as you want, because we got to get it through our heads that this is what students need. So even as we go through the different topics,
Well,
keep saying it, keep repeating it.
absolutely. And that's part of the reason why it's called Secrets Anonymous. It's because with all these issues, we try to keep them secret. And we try to figure out ways that we can deal with it, or we think we should just suffer with this secret. And man, no matter what it is that's going on, I guarantee to you, if you share, if you just say, you know what, this is what I'm struggling with, then you're taking that secret's power away, and you're giving more power to hope now. It can't be hopeful if you're the only one that's dealing with it. Hope is about people coming together. Hope is about knowing that no matter what happens, I have somebody that is with me and loves me, and I'm going to be able to do these things.
Yep. And so often that's what students are missing today. People are missing today, is that hope. And so you're offering that piece of hope that gives people hope. And it's really sharing and opening up. And that's up to us to do that. And I think you
Right.
lead as a good example as well through the book, sharing your own stories, and that students can relate to you then. And they say, you've struggled with it, you have been there, and you have overcome. And they can see that hope in that sharing of the story. And so you offer that even through your very life.
Right. And that's really
Yeah.
the reason why I share some of these hard stories, is because it's like, look, this has happened to me. And this has been part of my healing, to say, okay, this is what I've dealt with. And as students hear those stories, they'll go, wow, I can really connect with that. And now I can share my story. And so you can't tell people to do something that you are not doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so next subject is family matters that you talk about, and this more has to do with divorce or fatherlessness that's happening. And you share some statistics that are quite staggering. So you share that, I'm not going to share all of them because you have to get the book again to learn them all, but 90% of all runaway and homeless teens are fatherless. And then another statistic is 85% of children who exhibit behavioral disorders come from fatherless homes. So those are quite high numbers, just to give examples. But what do fatherless students need in order to succeed? So these statistics are staggering. What have you seen that these fatherless children need in their lives?
And I don't want to put this all on the student. That's when it comes to us as adults and as parents, is when we see this happening, that we do something about it. For instance, I've worked with an organization, Free International, that fights human trafficking here in the United States. And we go into schools and talk about different things that look for, and traffic, or one of their friends are being trafficked. One of the things, as we're talking to them, I'll never, where this guy, there's this couple, she was a nurse at the school, and her husband, I believe, and one day out of the blue, boom, their 6 was gone. And they're going through it, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. Come to find out, this at the mall. he started to talk to her, and it wasn't like real quick or anything. He would run into her at the mall. Oh, you're so beautiful. Hey, you know what? Can I take you to lunch? I'll buy your food. Or you see that purse over there that you want? And he got her really, really comfortable. And then after he got her really comfortable, then they started to date. And then as they started to date, she actually introduced him to her parents, and they were like, he was a good dude. And then later on, and this is like a whole 6 to 7 month process, he started to say, hey, why don't you sneak out, come to my house, and we'll just chill out together. And so she's starting to go to his house, come back uh, in order to be home just in time to wake up and go to school. And so one day he was like, hey, I'm taking a trip to Chicago, and I would really love for you to come with me. And he took her from Chicago, and then right there, he didn't let her go back home. This all knew what was going on, and they didn't know that she was going to be trafficked, but they knew like something's going on, and she's dealing with this guy. There are people at school that knew those things, where my mom always says it takes a village to raise one child. Every student needs that village, because you as a parent is not always going to be able to be around 100% of the time. And so it's us as responsible and going, okay, I see that one of my students' friends is dealing with him, so I'm just going to invite them to come over. I'm just going to ask them questions. I remember my mom, she would always just, when any of my friends came over, that was it. That was her kid, and she took care of them. I remember one time she yelled at one of my friends that came over, like she was yelling at me, and I was like, oh snap. He was so surprised by it, but he was like, man, I didn't know your mom cared like that. And it was like, yeah, she's just, since she's loving me, she's got to love the people I hang around with as well.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that is so good and so true, and something that we as parents can take with us as well as we're raising our children. Um, okay, next
Mm-hmm.
topic was addiction. Um, what are the first steps for students to getting out of addiction?
You have to recognize that you have an issue, and you will never be able to get out of it if you think you don't have a problem with it. And sometimes it takes other people telling you that you may have an issue with something for you to finally realize it. And if one of your friends is coming up to you and going, are you okay? Or maybe you should slow down. Really take that seriously and go, okay, what is going on? Then from there, as
Mm-hmm.
soon as possible. Don't continue to fall down that rabbit hole. I don't even know if people say that anymore, but don't continue to fall down that of addiction, but really go and get help. And whether it's drugs and alcohol or pornography, I don't want nobody to feel ashamed about the things that they struggle with, because shame thrives in secrecy, and it demands your loyalty. And it's saying don't tell anybody, because if they know this is what you struggle with, then they're going to not like you. They're going to treat you differently, look at you differently. And you have to let somebody know. And you'll be surprised. Like, people aren't going to judge you. And it's like, I love you. I just want to help you. I'm glad you told me so I can help you get out of this. So recognize you have a problem and go talk to somebody about it. Get help as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. And then what about for the parents or adults? If you see your student, your child that is struggling with addiction, what advice would you give to the adults in the student's life?
Be able to sit down and talk about it. Uh, there was actually a parent a couple of weeks ago after I got done speaking. She came over to me and she's crying, and I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And she goes, "My son, he has this really bad porn addiction. I don't know what to do." And she goes, "I'm going to talk to him about it, but I don't know what to say." And I just looked at her and I go, you're already doing the right thing. Don't get mad with them. Don't don't like jump to you're grounded. But it's really like, hey, what's going on? Why do you feel like the need to go and drink? Why do you feel the need to watch pornography all the time? And to have a calm and collected conversation about it. And when we get to the discipline portion, and the reason why I do the quotes with discipline, because it's not necessarily I want to punish you for what you've done, but it's really now we need to take steps to protect you. I'm doing these things now for you, not because I'm mad, but because I love you. And now I have to make sure that you are protected from this. And really that's a parent's job is number one, to prepare your kids to live without you. But also number two, to protect them and to make sure that they can grow up healthy and they have more than what you have had in order to succeed.
Good. That's awesome. Great advice. Okay, next topic we're going to look at is body image. So you talked about in your book something called the domino effect relating to body image. Can you explain what should a person do who is struggling with their body image relating to this domino effect?
Right. So pretty much, without going into too much detail, it's the moment that you start to think like, hey, uh, I don't like the way I look. I think my body's I'm too fat. And then as you start to do those things where you're like, maybe I should go and work out more, and maybe I should give more. I don't even know. Like you start to go down this route, and things are getting worse and worse and worse because now you're trying to find different ways to do that. And now it's like, well, now I don't look good in this, and you start to hurt your health, and so it's really just being able to recognize, you know what, even though I may not like this portion of myself, but I need to go and trust the people around me and know, like, for instance, I I'm being completely honest here. Uh, I hate the way that my teeth look. It bugs me so bad, and it's even today. It's still hard for me to smile with my teeth because I don't like it. But the one thing that keeps me from either completely stopping smiling, completely like not covering up my mouth when I talk, is knowing that my wife is like, Terrence, I love your smile. Why do you need to cover it up? Or other people that, even students, after I tell my story about my teeth, I have students come up to me all the time and are just like, I love your teeth. They look great. Do you know Michael Strahan? He's awesome too. And I'm like, okay. Like, it's good to know like what I'm thinking inside is not the truth that's going on.
Yeah.
Sorry, if you hear crying, that's my little girls. I think they're hungry. I don't know.
It's that time of day. Yes, it's
Yes.
understandable.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we're running a little late with our interview anyways, so yes, you can thank them for us later and your beautiful wife as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yes, okay, so going on here, self-harm. So harmful behaviors to our bodies. Why do some people resort to self-harmful behaviors, and what can one do to stop it?
Well, and that's the thing about self-harm as well, where you're they're trying to find means to feel something and trying to let whatever is going on inside, that secret that they're holding, it's going to come out one way or another. And so some people will resort to not eating. Some people will resort to cutting themselves. There's this one student I ran across. They had cuts all over their arm, and she was just like, I have to not feel, because when I go home, she goes, my grandpa rapes me, and I can't be there mentally and emotionally as he is raping me. So she's like, I just close off and I don't feel. And she goes, I don't even remember when it happens. I just know when it's done. And she goes, and so when I come out of that, I need something to wake me back up. I need something that I can just feel. And so for her, it was Excel. And sometimes she would cut deeper and deeper until finally she was like, okay, I feel that. And it feels good to them, because it's like they feel so dead emotionally that that physical pain that they can control is one of those first things where it's like, this is a way that I have control over my body. And so they'll take it, and the students will do different things, not just cutting, but whole other things.
Yeah. So how would you say that they can stop it then? You've already mentioned it before in your answers.
Right.
You said that talking.
Once again, absolutely. You got to tell somebody, and you got to talk it through. And one of the things about it is you have to talk in a way that you feel comfortable with. So a lot of times students don't want to say like, well, I cut myself, but for them, a lot of times with dealing with, they call it Generation Z. And I think that's students born between, I want to say 2008, I want to say, maybe it's even earlier than that, until today. These students, people always, as adults, we're always just like, they're on their social media, they're on Instagram and Snapchat. They don't really have real relationships with people. That's not the case at all. They're probably more socially active than we are. They just communicate in a totally different way now. And for your student not to want to come and talk to you face to face, that's okay. That they may not feel comfortable with that. But if you're like, hey, if you need to write a note to somebody. If you need to send a message, whatever you need to do to get that message out, then do it. And don't just think, I can't ever like go up and tell this person this is what's happening or this is what I'm doing. Find another way to do it, and that's okay. You communicate the way that you communicate.
Well, it's interesting because you wrote that even when you talk about something that's so difficult, it restores your chemicals back to their normal levels. So that's the interesting thing about when we talk, there's an actual chemical reaction. And I find that to be fascinating. And I think I need to talk more. I think that's a good lesson for me as well.
Absolutely.
Generation
We
Z,
all need to talk more.
Katya's asking, Generation Z, can you define that? Is it 95 to 2010?
I have a book right here actually with me that I have been reading up on it. But I want to say Generation Z is, let me see if I can find it. Let's see here. So millennials are from 1981 to 1996. And so anything after that, probably about 2000 to now, Z.
So 2000 to now.
And so I didn't, yeah, I didn't
pretty
even
close.
realize that I was a millennial. I always thought that I was a Generation Xer, but that is not the case. We are millennials.
Wow. We're old. No.
Right. You know what? I don't even know how old you are, Christina. What? You're my age, aren't you? 36?
Yeah, 35, so 83. Yeah.
Yep. You're a millennial.
Similar. Who knew?
Right?
Thank you, Katya, for the question. Okay, moving on. Two to three more questions, okay? The big topic now coming up, suicide. Okay, it's Suicide Awareness Prevention Month right now. Huge topic happening. So many stories that we've heard going around as well. But what can you encourage people with suicidal thoughts to do? If you're struggling with suicidal thoughts,
Yeah.
what should you do?
I this is being repeated over and over again, but it's talking about
Mm-hmm.
your thoughts and saying I
Yep.
feel like this is happening. And even when I got confronted with it, I'll never forget. I'm sitting at my computer and I'm just thinking about like taking my life. And my wife walked in and she's like, "What's going on?" And I'm like in tears. And that was the first time I actually told somebody, like, I don't want to be here no more. And this is what started the process of my healing. It was being able to open up and say, yeah, this is my thoughts, as dark as they may seem. This is what I'm thinking. And so, yeah, it's tough, and especially as somebody that's being told this, we automatically want to be like, well, why do you feel that way? You shouldn't be sad. You got everything. Why would? Nope. Remember, this isn't about you. This is about what they're feeling and what they're going through. And so you got to hear them out and not put your questions upon them, but just reinforce, like, I am sorry, but I love you, and we're going to walk through this together, okay? And questions upon them, like, just let them share, and you just be there to put an arm around them. And if they need to go, they need some help, you walk them there. Don't just say, hey, you need to go and see somebody. It's like, we're going to go and we're going to see somebody. I don't even have to be in the room with you, but I want to make you at least talking to somebody that can help. And we as
Yep.
parents, we have to recognize that we are not counselors. And as much as you love your student, remember, our job, we're parents. We want to protect them. Obviously, we want to do whatever it is to make sure they're okay. But there are some things that's happening with them that either A, we're not seeing, or B, they're not letting us in on, and that counselor will be able to help them through that. Wow, there's a lot going on out there.
Yep. All right, we'll try to wrap this up here. We know you got to get back to your family.
I'm like, wow.
So I know, but I do want to touch on. Can you discuss the suicide contagion? Is it a valid concern? That's something I've
Yes.
heard before. Is that we shouldn't talk about it, but if you can just touch on it.
No, that's actually so suicide contagion. What that is basically schools, and a lot of people are afraid to like bring it up. So if somebody was to say take their life at a school, the school's like, hey, we don't want to like celebrate them and say like, oh, like romanticize them taking their life. And so they're like, we're just not going to talk about it. But that is not a healthy way to do it. What we need to do is have healthy conversations about it and be real about it, and not say, you know what, yeah, this person, they were great, they were awesome, and they took their life, but be like, look, this is how their actions have affected all of us in the school. How do you feel? Are you mad at them? Or how does that make you feel when you see that this person's done it? And we need to help not just students, but us as well, like come to terms with what's going on and help people see like this was not a good idea. And this, they thought it was maybe a good idea, but look how it's affected all of us now.
Yep, that's true. It's important to have that awareness and know, spread that. Okay, so the last chapter of your book talks about making family happen. And I thought this was really interesting and very key, and my favorite chapter of the whole book, really. It provides a lot of solution to the problem. So how do you create a culture of making family happen in one's own family? How do you make that happen?
Right. So one of the big things is, unfortunately, a lot of our world today, there have been divorces. There's a lot of broken homes. And so with families, we're having different families come together and blended families. And as a student, you have to respect that person that's coming in, either that mom or that dad that's coming into that family now. You have to be okay and respecting their lines that they're giving. because it's really easy for you to go, you're not my mom, you're not my dad, you can't tell me what to do. But remember, this person, they're trying to show you love. Even if they're disciplining you, it's not because they don't care about it. It's actually harder to discipline somebody than it is to just let them go and do whatever they want to do. And so as that student, you have to respect, like, all right, you're drawing these lines, and I'm going to respect that you are trying to love me. And love is not just an emotion, but love is that action that that person is taking. And so respect those actions. But then also as parents, if you're coming into that family that already has maybe a child or a couple of children, you can't look at them like they're different from you. And in the book, I talk about having my stepdad, and I was interviewing him for the book, and he just said it outright. He was like, when I came into the family, I knew the only way this is going to work is if I saw you guys as my kids and not you guys are my stepkids. He was like, you guys are my kids. And so he never used the word stepkids. And even today, if people get introduced and he goes, yeah, this is my son, Terrence. And even now, like, I have a father, but I have a dad, and that dad is Andrew. And so,
Yeah, that's so important that you have that relationship and that bond. And you talk about it more in your book as well, the difference between your biological father and your dad. And so you got to read the book. I'm not going to say any more. Got to read the book. Get the
different,
book.
like,
Okay, so you mentioned as
info.
well that, yep, exactly. But you had mentioned about making family happen, that you can bring other people into your family to support them and reach out and do that. No matter the circumstance, people need love, even if that family is a surrogate family for other families. So you said even your mom was that for a lot of your friends as well. And how can we help make that family happen for other people and point them in the right direction? So is there anything, so what are some ways that families can reach out to make this other children and teens who are in need of that support? How can we do that as a family to find those teens that need that support?
Once again, I know it's hard for some of us, but we need to start taking responsibility of sometimes even other students. And you need to reach out and gain more information, because once again, remember, you're not doing this because you have all this energy and you're like, I love to be a parent to all kids. But you're doing this because this student is connecting with your student. And since they are, you have to make sure that your student's connecting to healthy people. And you do whatever you can do to help that. And so if you see a student that's either, one of the things that happened, or even at my church, is one time we had this kid come in, and he wore the same clothes all the time. And finally it got to the point where, like, okay, this is crazy. And so we reached out to his mom, and she was just like, well, we don't have enough money to go buy him. He's always growing. And so it's like, you know what? We're just going to take the money out of our pocket, and we're going to go get this kid some clothes, because even though it seems it's like not a big deal, but it comes to be a big deal when we're talking about self-worth and who you are. And if you feel like you're not good enough to have new clothes, then you're not good enough for a lot of other things. And that to me is horrible. And to know that a student thinks that they don't deserve good things, and if me as not even their parent can show them that they are, then I am able to help that family come back together. And when I go into schools, I make sure I am not judging your parents. I don't know why your parents have done the things that they have done. And I'm not going to tell you that your parents are bad people. But what I am going to tell you is that they're struggling with something. And so if they need help, if you need help in this situation, if you need help in talking to them, let's get somebody from your school to call your parents to come in so you can communicate what it is you need to communicate with them. And if there's something that we need to do more to help bridge that gap between you and your parents, then we're going to help you do that.
That's good. That brings me into my next question then. How do you think schools can help connect students in need to families that are willing to help? And is this something that you've seen in any school today?
Right. Yeah, and it's once again just having, even if those parents that are involved in the PTA are just knowing that there are families that are connected to your school, that are serving your school, and when you see that student that's hurting, find a way to get them connected to that family. And look at who that kid is hanging out with at your school, and be able to create those moments. And this is why schools, even though students, they roll their eyes at it, but schools have these different events, and it's like family night and all these different things. It's like, oh gosh. But making sure those kids that don't have a family be like, no, you're coming to family night, and you're going to be part of my family now, and we're going to adopt you for this moment, and we're going to go play games and do different things like that. Or when we go to the school assembly, usually at the end of the school assembly, we'll invite them back for a night rally. And it's during those times where I'm like, hey, if you need to bring your parents, tell them let's go. And it has been so many times where students will come, and they'll come with their parents. Parents will come up to me and is like, this better be good. My kid came home telling me that I need to go to this. And by the end of it, they're in tears, and they're like, I did not realize what I was doing. And they're giving their kid a hug, and it's like, boom, this is why we do these things. This is why we have those night rallies. And so being able to foster experiences like that.
So we need more Terrence Talleys around the U.S., huh?
Hey, wherever anybody's willing, I'm willing to go.
That's right. Well, we're going to get you to Sweden one of these days. We need you over here too.
Come on, I'll be ready.
All right, our last question. So, what is the power in sharing our stories with one another?
Your story is everything. Because your story is what people can connect to. And people don't necessarily connect to how great your talent is or how well you are at your job, but people connect to your story. And if we continue to share each other's stories, not only will you begin to give hope to others, but your hope in yourself will build as well, or your hope for yourself will build as well. And so our stories, that's the most important thing that we can share and talk through. And so I'm all about stories. I love stories. So
there you go, and you're the man of stories as well. So there you've heard it, everybody. Share your story with those around you. Share those with Terrence. If you're a student that you have a story, please send them in to Terrence. If you have a story that you want to share with us through Parental Legacy, we would love to share your story on Parental Legacy to give hope. As Terrence said, that once you make your story known and it's not anonymous anymore, that is the power of the story, to bring it to light, to bring hope to people everywhere. And Terrence, you say it much better in your book. So I'm going to make another shameless plug. Buy the book. Go get the book. Yes. But Terrence, do you have any last thoughts as we close here?
No, definitely. I would say, hey, make sure that you know that you are loved and cared, because once again, you can't give out something that you don't have. And so you have to love yourself to be able to love your students, and so that they can see what it means to have worth in themselves as well.
So good. Good advice for parents as well. That's so true. So you can say that parents, teachers, if you're working with students or kids, love yourself, because you can't love with an empty heart. Good.
Right.
Well, Terrence, thank you so much for giving us your time, your thoughts, your wisdom, your experience, your stories. It's our privilege and our honor, and thanks again for your patience, everybody watching as well, through all of our technical challenges and difficulties. It's worth it. It was worth it to hear from you, Terrence, and we look forward to your next book coming out and another interview in the making.
Thanks, Christina. You go take care of that baby. I can't believe you had a baby a couple weeks ago. That's crazy. Go take care of her.
I will. I will. You go take care of your family too. Give them big hugs from us and thank them for giving us your time tonight.
Thank you. No problem. Have fun. Bye.